I didn't ride in a dry gulch that day expecting to change the course of anyone's life, least of all my own. All I wanted was a horse. Not a fast one, not even a pretty one, just strong, sure-footed, and able to pull the plow through the hard-packed clay out on my spread. But the Lord, or whatever drives the desert wind, had different plans. Dry Gulch looked smaller than I remembered. One street, two saloons, a shuttered church, and a livery that leaned like it had grown tired of holding itself up. The sun beat down without mercy, the heat shimmering above the dirt like ghosts rising. I tied up outside Grange's General, wiped the trail dust off my duster, and stepped inside for water and word. That's where I heard it first, the name Harlan Greavy. Horse trader, the storekeep muttered, slicing jerky behind the counter. Camped just south of the arroyo. Got some good stock, but he hesitated, glanced around like the walls might be listening. He deals in other things, too. The kind that don't talk back, if you catch my meaning. I didn't. Not yet. I found Greavy just where I was told. His camp squatted beneath a cottonwood like a blister. 3 tents, a wagon, a steel fence pen, and one of those iron-mouthed men who smile only when there's pain involved. Harlan Greavy wore a bowler hat that didn't suit his face and had a toothpick he never stopped chewing. His beard was too neat, and his voice was slick with false charm. "Looking for a horse?" he asked, already turning toward the pen. "You got an eye for a gelding, mister? I got a bay in here could haul the Lord's own chariot uphill in the rain." "I'm not looking to get to heaven," I said. "Just to plow a field." He laughed, loud and hollow, then waved me over. I stepped to the fence, eyeing the stock. Good legs, clean eyes, sturdy shoulders. He wasn't lying. The horses were solid. But behind them, half obscured by a wagon and some hanging tack, was a tarp covering something in the corner of the pen. I heard a sound then. Not an animal. Not exactly. A kind of rustling whimper, like a person crying into cloth. "What's under the tarp?" I asked. Greavy's smile thinned. "Storage." It wasn't. I stepped around the wagon. Greavy didn't stop me, but his eyes followed like a rattler tracking a boot. I peeled back the edge of the tarp. 3 children, chained to the fence. The eldest couldn't have been more than 12, a thin boy with copper hair, a split lip, and a look in his eye that could have carved granite. He stood in front of the 2 girls like a shield, chin up, arms spread. His wrists were ringed in rusted iron cuffs. Behind him, the older girl, maybe 8, gripped his shirt and stared at me like I might vanish if she blinked. The youngest, 6 or so, sat with her knees drawn up and said nothing. Her eyes, though, they didn't blink at all, just fixed on mine, silent, calm, like she'd seen something I hadn't yet. "Dead children," Greavy said, coming up behind me. "Their daddy owed me more than he could pay. Died in a cave-in last fall. Left me with nothing but a burned claim and a family of beggars. I took what I could salvage." "You took them?" I asked, voice low. "Paperwork's all proper. Sheriff signed off himself. Man's debt passes on in these parts. Always has." The boy's lip curled. "He forged it. Sheriff didn't sign nothing." "Boy's got imagination," Greavy said. "You know how orphans get." I looked at the chains again. Not just shackles. Branding irons lay nearby, cold now but stained at the tips. The kind you use to mark cattle. Or break a spirit. "You sell horses," I said. "Not people." "Depends who's buying." I could have walked away. Lord knows I wanted to. Trouble has a smell to it, like scorched oil and blood. I'd carried too much of it back from war, buried enough of it under fence posts and rocks to last 2 lifetimes. But that boy's eyes, they weren't pleading. They weren't even afraid. They were daring me to do the right thing. I turned back to Greavy. "I'll take the bay. And the children." He blinked. "Not for sale." "Everything's for sale," I said. "Name your price." He smiled again. This time, it didn't reach his eyes. $500. For all 4. 4. The horse and the brats. I pulled out a wad of bills. $250 for the horse and your silence. Or I go to the sheriff and ask about forged signatures. He studied me, then spat. "Keys are in the tent," he said. "But don't think this ends clean. They ain't yours. You just borrowed someone else's chain." He turned and walked away. I didn't watch him go. I found the keys, opened the locks one by one. The chains fell heavy on the dirt. The boy didn't thank me. He helped the girls to their feet, then looked me dead in the eye. "My name's Roscoe," he said. "This is Tilly. That's June." Both Thatcher, I told him, and they were coming with me. By the time we rolled out of that dust-stained camp, the sun had dipped behind the hills. Shadows stretched long across the trail, and the wind carried no birdsong. Just the creak of wagon wheels, the soft snore of the gelding, and 3 breaths behind me. Light, quiet, and uncertain. I didn't know what I was doing. Not really. I was just a rancher, long past glory and too smart to chase it again. But as we headed into the dark, I realized something strange. For the first time in years, I wasn't riding alone. The trail home twisted through cottonwood groves and over bone-dry ridges where nothing but yucca dared grow. I kept my eyes forward, hands loose on the reins, ears tuned to the rhythm behind me. The scrape of wagon wheels, the occasional cough from one of the girls, and Roscoe's wary footsteps. He refused to ride in the wagon, trailing beside it like a scout, one hand always hovering near the bed where his sisters sat huddled in the corner. I didn't speak much the first few miles. Neither did they. Words are like horses. No sense forcing them when they're spooked. Around midday, I stopped near a spring-fed arroyo and set up a small fire. Roscoe kept his distance, but Tilly crept closer when I handed her a biscuit and a strip of dried beef. She took them without looking up, chewing like someone expecting the taste of ash. June didn't eat it all, just held the food in her lap and watched me with those heavy, unblinking eyes. I tried for small talk, asked where they were from, who their father was, if they had kin anywhere. Roscoe finally answered. Our pa worked the mine east of Bitter Ridge. Got buried last October in a shaft that should have been condemned. Greavy owned it then. Owned everything. Your mother died 2 winters before. Fever. How'd Greavy get his hands on you? Pa borrowed money to pay the doctor. After he died, Greavy came with a signed order. Said we belonged to him now. Claimed the land, the shack, and us. I stirred the fire, more to keep my hands busy than for the heat. Sheriff let that happen. He's got Greavy's name on his payroll. Everyone does. I didn't ask more. Some wounds fester deeper the more you poke. The sun drifted west, casting long shadows that slid across the rocks like spilled ink. I offered Roscoe a spot near the fire. He didn't take it, but he didn't walk away either. That night, I kept watch while they slept curled together in the wagon bed. I sat beside the fire with my rifle across my lap and my back to a mesquite tree. Coyotes howled far off, but I wasn't listening for animals. I was listening for hooves. They found us the next morning. I'd taken a winding trail into the foothills, hoping the narrow canyons and switchbacks would give us time if anyone came looking. It didn't. 3 riders. Long coats. Black horses. Dust masks over their faces, but their posture said everything. Hired guns, not lawmen. One of them carried a short rifle slung low, but wrapped in rawhide. Another wore a pistol on each hip, handles white as bone. I didn't wait to see the third. I snapped the reins and shouted. The gelding responded, strong and steady, but the wagon wasn't built for speed. Roscoe clambered up beside me, rifle in his hands, too big for him, but he held it like he meant to use it. We're not going to outrun him, he said. No, I agreed. We're going to vanish. I cut off the trail and into the pines, taking a path I hadn't ridden in years. It twisted like a coiled snake, narrow and lined with brush, but it'd lead us to higher ground where trees grew thick and tracks vanished easy. By the time we reached the ridgeline, the riders were behind us, but closing fast. That's when I saw the smoke curl from a nearby hollow, blue and lazy. A small lean-to stood in the clearing beyond, and by it, a man in a worn wool vest stood cleaning a rabbit. He looked up as we thundered in. His face split with recognition. Kane, I said. He nodded, wiping his hands on a cloth. Bo Thatcher. Last I heard, you'd gone full hermit. I pointed behind me. 3 riders. Maybe more. I got children in the wagon. He took one look at the wagon, then moved without another word. Grabbed a tarp, threw it over the wagon's contents, and led us behind a boulder where the pine thickened. We hid there while the riders passed, hooves pounding like war drums. They didn't stop to check the clearing. Too focused. Too sure. When they were gone, I exhaled. You always bring this kind of company? Kane asked, lighting his pipe. Only when I go shopping for horses. He gave a dry chuckle, but his eyes lingered on the children. "They yours?" "No," I said, then added, "Not yet." He said nothing for a long moment. Then, "You can't keep running. Greavy'll send more. He owns more men than he does livestock. I'm taking them home. We'll figure it out there. You planning to fight him?" "If it comes to that." Kane packed a small satchel with jerky and a skin of water. "Then I'd suggest taking the Old Goat Trail through Devil's Hollow. Steep and mean, but it'll buy you a day." I clasped his hand. "Thank you." He looked down at June, who was still watching him without blinking. "She's a strange one. They've all seen too much. Then don't let them see more." We rode out not long after, cutting through narrow stone passages and switchback trails that wound like veins through the hills. Roscoe never put down the rifle. He didn't speak much, but once, when Tilly dozed beside him, he looked at me and said, "You could have left us there." "I know. Why didn't you?" I thought about it. About war, about silence, about the weight of doing nothing. "Because I've been chained too," I said. Roscoe looked forward again, but his grip on the rifle softened. We reached my ranch just after dusk. The gate stood open, swaying in the breeze. I narrowed my eyes. My dog didn't come running. Then I saw the barn door. It wasn't closed. The barn door gaped like a wound, swinging slightly in the wind. I pulled the wagon to a stop just outside the corral, hand drifting toward my rifle. Nothing stirred but dust and a single crow on the fence post, eyeing us like it already knew what we'd find. Roscoe jumped down, rifle raised. I motioned for him to stay back, but he followed anyway, silent as shadow. Tilly and June huddled together in the wagon bed, their eyes wide but voices quiet. They'd learned fast how to read danger in the wind. I stepped inside the barn first. The smell hit me before anything else, sweat, gun oil, and the faintest trace of blood. My workbench had been overturned, feed barrel smashed. My hound, Duke, lay in the corner, still and stiff, an old wound opened again. I knelt beside him, brushed the dust from his fur. No bullet wound. Knife. A slow kind of killing. "Greavy's men," Roscoe whispered behind me. I nodded. "They were here. Yesterday, maybe. They'll be back." He wasn't wrong. We spent the rest of the evening repairing what we could. I boarded the barn door, cleaned the tack, and showed Roscoe how to check the fence line. He worked hard, shoulders tight, eyes always scanning the horizon. That boy had more grit than some men I'd served with, and less fear. I cooked beans and cornbread for supper. Tilly smiled for the first time when I handed her a tin plate. June didn't smile, but she leaned her head on her sister's shoulder, and for her, that was something. We ate by firelight, backs to the house wall, stars stretching cold and distant above us. The mountains were silent, holding their breath. That's when I made the decision. "I'm going into town tomorrow," I said. Roscoe looked up. "Back to Dry Gulch." "No, Bitter Ridge. Bigger town. Proper judge. I'm filing adoption papers." He blinked. "You're what?" "I'm making you mine. On paper, in ink. No one will have a claim on you after that. Not Greavy. Not anyone." Roscoe stared at me, mouth half open. "You don't even know us." "I know enough. I know you didn't break when others would have. I know you kept your sisters alive. I know what it means to lose everything and still keep walking." "You don't have to." "I do." The next morning, I left before sunrise, loaded my old mule with supplies and my father's colt, wrapped in a cloth like a promise. Bitter Ridge sat 2 days' ride north, but I figured I'd make it there by nightfall if the trail stayed clear. I told Roscoe to watch the girls, to stay inside, to bar the doors. He promised. But trouble don't wait for the right hour. I'd barely crossed the high pass when I saw smoke. Not town smoke, thick, dark, angry. I spurred the mule around, heart hammering. Something in my gut twisted cold. When I crested the last hill, I saw the flames. My ranch. The roof was ablaze, fire licking at the eaves. Men on horseback circled the yard, shouting, whooping like devils. I counted 4, maybe 5. Greavy wasn't with them, but his scent was all over it. I kicked the mule hard. By the time I reached the bottom, the house had collapsed on one side. Roscoe fired from behind the woodpile, ducking between shots, jaw clenched like a grown man. He hit one of the riders square in the chest. The man tumbled off his horse, limp. I dismounted while still moving, landed hard, and drew the colt. 2 quick shots, One clipped a rider's shoulder, the other sent his horse screaming into the sage. A third rider saw me and wheeled around, gun raised, but he didn't fire fast enough. I did. He fell sideways, head snapping back. Roscoe ran to me, panting. Tilly and June are in the root cellar. I got him down there when the shooting started. You did good, I said. You held him off. His voice trembled now that it was over. They were going to take us. Said they'd bring us back to Greevy in pieces if they had to. I holstered the Colt and grabbed his shoulder. No one's taking you. We checked the house. The back wall had collapsed, but the flames hadn't reached the cellar. I pulled the girls out one by one. Tilly sobbed into my coat. June held on to Roscoe like a lifeline. After the fire died down, we buried the men in a shallow grave out by the juniper tree. I said no words over them. They'd chosen their path, and the earth would take them cold. We slept under the stars that night, wrapped in blankets and ash. My home was gone, but they weren't, and that mattered more. The next morning, I rode to Bitter Ridge. This time, I didn't wait. I spoke to the judge myself, laid down every dollar I had, and swore under oath that those children were mine by heart, if not by blood. The judge asked questions. I answered steady. When he signed the order, something in my chest finally eased. By the time I returned, Roscoe had started rebuilding the chicken coop. Tilly was picking through what little had survived. In June, she handed me a drawing. For stick figures, holding hands. One of them wore a hat. I put on a mantle of what would become our new home. We weren't safe yet. Greevy would come again, one way or another. But next time, he'd find more than a rancher. He'd find a father with something to fight for. And this time, I wouldn't be alone. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm, one both comforting and fragile. We rebuilt slowly, board by board, nail by nail. My hand stayed splintered, but it was a good ache, honest work. Roscoe proved near tireless, rising with the sun and never shying from the heavy jobs. Tilly tended the garden I'd once let go to weeds, coaxing green from dust with a patience far beyond her years. June still said little, but each day she grew bolder, drawing chalk horses on the side of the well, humming soft tunes I didn't recognize but didn't dare interrupt. Our new home was smaller, tighter, built with thicker walls and narrow windows. I'd learned. We all had. Still, the question hung like smoke above us. When would Greevy come? I rode into town often, kept eyes on the mail, listened for rumors in the saloon where voices turned low when I walked in. Folks knew what happened. They didn't speak it outright, but their stares said enough. Some nodded. Some looked away. A few offered quiet words, nothing loud enough to echo. Then one evening, I saw the poster, tacked crooked on the telegraph post outside the general store. A thick sheet, still fresh with ink. There wasn't a picture, just bold letters. Wanted for kidnapping, Bo Thatcher. Last seen with 3 minor wards of Marcus Greevy. $200 reward. Dead or alive. Roscoe read it over my shoulder. His jaw clenched tight, the way it always did when the world tried to bend him again. That man wants everything, he muttered. Even us. He won't get you, I said. But I knew what this meant. Greevy wasn't coming himself. He was sending a message. Any bounty hunter, any mercenary, any desperate soul with a horse and a gun now had cause to come for us. I wasn't just protecting the kids from a crooked land baron anymore. I was protecting them from the whole damn territory. I took the poster down. Quietly, carefully. Didn't speak to no one. But that night, I wired Kane. Next morning, he rode in on a roan Mustang with his rifle slung low and that worn wool vest buttoned tight. He saw the children, saw the hollow look behind their eyes, and he understood without words. I'll stay a spell, he said. Long as you need. We dug trenches around the new house. Fortified the barn with cross beams. Roscoe learned how to load, aim, and clean a rifle properly. I taught him to shoot from cover, to count shots, to listen for footfall over dry earth. Tilly practiced with a slingshot, and June took to sharpening sticks like she was carving arrows. They weren't soldiers. They were still children, but they were mine, and I'd be damned if anyone laid another finger on them. 2 weeks passed, then 3. The tension stretched thinner. We barely slept, took turns keeping watch. Then came a sound. Midnight. A low thunder. Hoofbeats, distant but steady. Kane and I were on the roof when we heard it. He handed me a spyglass. 7 riders. Maybe 8. Spread wide like a net. Moving slow, deliberate. Lanterns swinging from saddles. No lawman would come like that. They want to surround us, Kane whispered. They think we'll run. Are we? I shook my head. Not this time. He smiled, slow and grim. Good. We roused the kids. Quiet, quick. Tilly led June to the trapdoor in the floor we'd built. Small cellar, just big enough for 2. They climbed in without protest. Roscoe stayed beside me, rifle clutched in both hands, knuckles white. I looked him square in the eyes. You stay low. You fire only if you have to. He nodded once. No bravado. Just resolve. Kane and I took the front. The riders came into view, ghosts in the moonlight. One at the lead raised a torch. Bo Thatcher, he called, voice soaked in whiskey and threat. You've got something belongs to Mr. Greavy. You hand over the children now, and maybe he shows you mercy. Kane raised his rifle. You boys ever wonder what mercy from a rattlesnake looks like? The lead rider didn't respond. Just dropped the torch. The fire flared in the grass. And then the bullets came. The shootout ripped through the night, echoing off the hills like thunder in a canyon. I hit one rider square off his horse. Kane dropped 2 more before the dust even cleared. One man tried to rush the barn, but Roscoe clipped his leg clean from the loft window. They retreated then, limping and broken, leaving behind the wounded and the dead. By dawn, the fire had burned itself out. The smoke was bitter, but the sky above was clear. Kane stood by the well, bandaging a graze on his arm. They'll be back, he said. Not them, I replied. Not after tonight. But Greavy's still breathing. I looked at the horizon, where the road vanished into the haze. Not for long. He raised an eyebrow. You're going after him? I nodded. He put a bounty on me. Time I returned the favor. Kane smiled, slow and cold. Then you won't be riding alone. I turned back toward the house. June peeked from the cellar, eyes round. Tilly clutched her hand. Roscoe stood at the doorway, already reloading. No, I wouldn't be riding alone. And I wouldn't stop till Greavy's shadow was buried for good.